We've already had one Bible reading this morning, and now we're going to have two more. The first one is Psalm 63. Psalm 63. A couple of Fridays ago, we were doing a youth group thing, and we did that thing, Taylor Swift lyric or verse from Lamentations. And there's the running line about Taylor Swift albums is, what breakup is she referring to in the next song that she's written, right? And that's because dark times often lead to creativity, right? When you go through a valley or you go through a difficulty, often poetry or art or something comes out of you, right, if you're that way inclined. And this is a poem that's come out of King David when he wasn't yet established as king, and he was in a difficult time. And this is the poetry that he created. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you, I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips my mouth will praise you. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. Those who want to kill me will be destroyed. They will go down to the depths of the earth. They will be given over to the sword and become food for jackals. But the king will rejoice in God. All who swear by God will glory in him, while the mouths of liars will be silenced. And some more poetry, this time from Isaiah chapter 55. Come, all who are thirsty, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, or your labour on what does not satisfy? Listen to me, and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest of fare. Give ear and come to me. Listen that you may live. I will make an everlasting covenant with you. My faithful love promised to David. See, I have made him a witness to the peoples, a ruler and the commander of the peoples. Surely you will summon nations you know not, and nations you do not know will come running to you because of the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, for he has endowed you with splendor. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them turn to the Lord, and he will have mercy on them, to our God, for he will freely pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. As the rain and snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth, and make it bud and flourish so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and hills will burst into song before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Instead of the thorn bush will grow the juniper. Instead of the briars, the myrtle will grow. This will be for the Lord's renown, an everlasting sign that will endure forever. The first reading was from Psalm 63, and it's an individual psalm. It most likely stems out of a time when Saul was still king. And if you remember your Bible stories, David, slayed Goliath and all those sort of things. So he had a place of privilege in Saul's royal household. And he was great friends with Jonathan. But then Saul got jealous of him, and Saul decided he was going to kill David. And so there was this complicated thing that went on where Jonathan had to fire an arrow, and there was a code that if he said a certain set of words, it meant that Saul was going to kill David or wanted to kill David. If he said another set of words, it was okay. And so then David had to run away, and he ran away to a local kingdom, and then they were scared of David because he'd had this success with the Philistines, so he had to act as if he was mad so that they wouldn't kill him. And then he escaped from them, and then he was out in a desert region, in a dry and arid land where there is no water. And it's probably around this time when Saul and his army came and found him, and Saul happened to be coming into the cave where David was and relieving himself, and David snuck up and cut off the corner of his cloak, and then was remorseful that he had done even that, let alone not, even though he'd refrained from killing him. And so you have this mountainous valley somewhere down in the eastern or southeastern part of what is modern-day Israel, maybe with a creek flowing through it, maybe not, but it's dry and arid, and then, David is on high alert. He's hyper-vigilant, because who knows when Saul and his henchmen are going to arrive and try and kill him. And so he's fearing for his life. He's thirsty and he's hungry. He's hyper-vigilant, and he writes this psalm. Now, although we aren't thirsty and hungry this morning, especially those of us who were here for breakfast, maybe you're hyper-vigilant. Maybe there's other things in your life that you're really hungering and thirsting about. And hear the words of David. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. That's because when he was back in Saul's presence, he was like part of the royal entourage and would have had access to Shiloh, where they had the Ark of the Covenant, all those sort of things. Because your love is better than life. My lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live. In your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips my mouth will praise you. Have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? It's this sort of pyramid thing, and the idea is that at the base level is the sort of base physiological needs, for food and rest and all those sort of things. And then there's above that there's safety needs from free from the threat of war or whatever else. And above that there's relational needs, and then you get to the top, the sort of self-actualization needs, and it's like almost somehow you've got to deal with all the physical and all those sort of things first before you can really deal with some of the higher level things. But this psalm tips that upside down. It says, your love is better than life. There is something actually more important than I need now than just a drink of water. There's something more important than I need now than being safe from Saul and his army for one more night. And that is your love. Your presence. Your sustaining presence. And that's because all of those other things that we desire for or need, for food or acceptance or safety or all those sort of other things, they are true and valid, but they point to a deeper reality. The deeper reality that we actually need to be connected to the source of life. The source of all those other things ultimately comes from God. And you might go through times and seasons where those other things are disrupted or taken away for whatever reason. And it's not that you shouldn't look for them, but you need to say, the lack of those things just makes it more evident that I am actually needing to be connected to the source of life, actually. Because I know that if the worst happens, if I lose my life or I get hungry or whatever else, I know I'm still with God. And so this world says, make sure all those other things are sorted out first and then maybe think about spiritual things. Sort out your housing and your clothing and your food and your career and all that sort of thing. And then if you have a bit of extra time on top of that, maybe see if you can squeeze in a bit of spiritual life. But David said, no, don't do it that way. That's the wrong way around. The world thinks it's the right way up, but it's actually the wrong way up. And you need to turn it upside down. I have seen you in your sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. When I'm hypervigilant, trying to listen out for the slightest noise of a soldier sneaking up to try and stab me, in those moments, I'm going to think of you, God. You are my help. I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. So personally, let's be people who make sure we tip up Maslow's hierarchy of needs and know that our deepest need, just like that rebel on the cross next to Jesus, Jesus, remember me, is connection to God. We may be hungry, we may don't have enough or whatever else it is, but if we are connected to God, there can come a deep sense of satisfaction, a deep sense of love and belonging and security. That seems crazy to the outside observer, but is very real on the inside. The book of Isaiah is an amazing book. And we've spent some time looking at it briefly, at least a few years ago. But the first 39 chapters can be summarised as a book of judgment. God is going to bring judgment on the nation of Judah and Israel because of all the things that they've done, how they've abandoned God. But then there is this second section from chapter 40 through to end of chapter 55, which is like a book of comfort. God is doing something. And then from there to the end of the chapter, it can be simplified, if you like, as a book of hope. And so this is this chapter is in the second one, and it comes after the amazing chapter 53, where it talks about the suffering servant, dramatically foreshadowing the ministry of Jesus. And then chapter 54 is amazing too, because it talks about God's love and forgiveness and restoration. And in fact, in chapter 54, it essentially says, in the first few verses, it's making reference to the barren woman, which is an echo of God's promise to Abraham that he will actually have kids of his own with his wife Sarah. And then it refers a bit later to how they are people that have been saved and rescued by God, echoing God's covenant promises with them on Mount Sinai. And then it talks about how it goes on to God's promise and covenant with Noah, that God will no longer destroy everything and God's going to be looking after them. And so there's this great hope and promise of forgiveness and new life, etc., that flows through chapter 54 and into chapter 55 as well. And in chapter 55, in the middle of it, there's this reference to David, and God had made a covenant with David that one of your descendants would always be on the throne. And so that's pointing forward to the Messiahship of Jesus. And then the last few verses, verse 13, says, instead of the thorn bush will grow the juniper, and instead of the briars, the myrtle will grow. This will be for the Lord's renown and everlasting sign. And that's a reversal of the curse of Genesis 3, where it said that weeds and thorns would grow up in the ground. No, they're going to be replaced now by the juniper and by the myrtle. And so, like in these two chapters, there is this renewal, if you like, of all the major highlights of what God has happened in the Old Testament. Creation is going to be renewed. God's family, the family of Abraham, is going to be renewed. The covenant that he made with Moses is going to be renewed. The promise that he had through Noah, a similar promise is being made now. And there's a renewal promise about the kingdom of the Messiah also coming about. And so there's these great promises of God's renewing work, recreating work, new creation work. And in the middle of that, these verses talk to the community and talk to the people. Come, all of you who are thirsty. Come to the waters, you who have no money. Come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread and your labour on what does not satisfy? Again, there is this turning upside down. It's not actually about wine and milk and all those sort of things, and it's not even actually about money. You don't need money to get this, to enter into this new creation project that God is doing. And it's better than wine, it's better than milk, it's better than bread. And for those of us who love bread, we go, wow, that must be really good. And what does Isaiah say? What's better than that? Listen. Listen to me and eat what is good. And you will delight in the richest affair. Give ear and come to me. Listen that you may live. And so we have in Psalm 63 this call to seek God and put God first, even when there's other needs crying out and screaming out. And here Isaiah says the same thing. All of those things might seem good, but what you need to do is you need to listen. And it says down in verse 6, echoing Psalm 63, seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he's here. Let the wicked forsake their ways and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them turn to the Lord and he will have mercy on them. And then, for my thoughts are not your thoughts. So can you see here? Isaiah is calling people, come on, it's better, because of God's new creation project, what God's about is better than anything you could imagine from a physical perspective. So come and listen. Seek him, turn away from other things. Be prepared to leave your old ways of thinking behind. Come to God and be prepared to have your thinking changed. You're thinking about who God is. You're thinking about who you are. You're thinking about God's promises to you. Thinking about your future. The thinking about God's provision for you. The thinking about how you deal with all of the stuff going on in your life. Be prepared to let it be changed by God's new creation reality and the hope and the promise that comes from that. Because God's thoughts and God's words are about new creation. And God says they're reliable. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return to it without watering the earth and making it bud and flourish so that it yields seed for the sower and bread for the eater, so is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it. And so we have this opportunity in the midst of all of the things going on in our life to say, no, I'm going to seek the Lord. And when I've found the Lord, then I'm going to listen to him. I'm really going to listen. And I'm going to be prepared to lay aside my existing ways of thinking about things. And I'm going to be prepared to let God give me a new perspective on those things. And however outrageous or unattainable or unreal they may yet seem to be, I'm going to put my confidence in that. And you might have all sorts of things that are going on in your life, relational turmoil and other things, and you come to God and you hear God say, you're my child whom I love. And you might think, I'm not worthy of being loved and I can't hear that. But no, I want you to lay aside your old way of thinking and receive God's word into your soul that says, you're my child. And you might be worried about this or that and the other thing, and you might need to hear God say to you, don't be afraid, I'm with you. Even if you're in a literal storm on a little boat on the Sea of Galilee and you're worried about drowning, I'm with you. So even if the storm is still raging, you don't need to be afraid because I'm with you. And nothing can separate you from me and my love. Maybe God's saying, that priority that you hold dear, let's just change that up a bit. let's move that one down 2 or 3 pegs and let's move something else up there. Becoming a bit more like Jesus is more important than getting the next promotion. Not that promotions are bad, just maybe that's more important. Or maybe it's a challenge to forgive others. You're enjoying the basking in God's forgiveness for you, and God says, okay, out of all of that, now go and forgive this person. And you don't really want to because you like being angry with them. And you get some sort of adrenaline rush when you tell others about how terrible they are. But God's saying, forgive as you have been forgiven. God is your good Heavenly Father. He knows exactly what words you need to hear from Him. And so we're going to have a time this morning to listen. We don't need to seek for God. We've found God in Jesus. We don't need to wonder what God is like. We know what God is like in Jesus. And we don't need to wonder whether He is with us here on the other side of the world rather than in Jerusalem, because He promised to be with us and sent the Spirit so that He is with us. So the seeking, wondering where God might be, that's a solved problem. God's right here. Wondering what God might be like, that's a solved problem. God's like Jesus. The seeking that we often need to do is the seeking that's, seeking through the clutter of our minds. To be able to say, no, I'm realising all of these things are cluttering and I'm just going to move them to the side. So I can pay attention to God. Cass Livesey at the Accessible Prophecy thing over the last couple of days has said, you don't hear God by striving. You hear God by resting. Now, we need to strive maybe to get to the point where we're focused on God. That might take a bit of effort, but we know that God's here and we know what God's like, and we've been focusing on God's stuff for the last hour or so a fair amount of that has already happened, right? So the trick now is to just rest. Because in resting, we're quietening ourselves. And we're quietening our thoughts. And we're giving our attention some space to begin to notice the things that God is whispering to our hearts. And so we're going to sing a song, Come As You Are. And then we're going to have a time of quiet. And just expect that God will whisper something to your soul. Now, it might be really simple, like, I love you. And you think, oh, yeah. No, really, stop, David, and think about it. No, I really want you to get it, David, this time. You've given lip service to it, but you really need to get it, David, that I love you. So don't just dismiss the idea or the thought or the verse or the picture just because it's simple. How many times does a parent tell a young child, I love you? Over and over and over again. But it could be something a bit more detailed, and that's okay too. So we're going to sing this song, Come As You Are. I'm going to invite you to stand for that, and then when it comes to the end, I'm just going to invite you to sit, and we're going to rest. And just expect God to whisper to your souls. Let's stand together.